Something is deeply wrong with computing. Not wrong in a minor, inconvenient way. Wrong in a way that has shut the majority of the human race out of the digital world entirely and kept them out for 80 years. About 26% of the world's population do not use the internet. Approximately 60% of the world's population do not own or regularly use a computer. And yet every single one of those people, every grandmother, every child, every farmer, every person who has ever been told they are not good with technology, can interact with another human being without any training at all. That gap between how easy it is to work with a person and how hard it is to work with a computer is not an accident of human nature. It is a design flaw, one that has been baked into every computer on Earth since the 1940s. Someone figured out why and what to do about it. What you are about to experience is the result. This video features ExoBrain 2, first demonstrated in 2002. We are sharing it with you not because it is old, but because it shows you the foundation. What we are building in 2026 goes far beyond what you are about to see, but you cannot fully appreciate where we are going without understanding where it all began. To understand what ExoBrain is, you first have to understand the scale of what is broken. The world's most complicated software, Google, runs on 2 billion lines, approximately 90 million megabytes, of code. The human genome, in other words, the complete set of genetic instructions, or DNA, found within every cell in a human organism, which builds and runs your entire brain, your nervous system, your body, contains the equivalent of 600 megabytes. Google's code is 11.25 million times larger than the human genome, and all it does is help you find haystacks on the internet, provide emails, and a few other bits and pieces like that. So something is very, very wrong. We now know that what is fundamentally wrong is that the human is using a phenomenally powerful, infinitely flexible, and incredibly simple way of handling all data and activities that has never been identified until now. But all software, AI included, is using a normal, ultra-complex, very weak method of doing things that can never do what a human can. In effect, the industry has been trying to build a car that will fly 400 people to New York like a 747, or build machines that are the size of ants that can do everything that humans can do. It will never happen. The great minds have been saying it for a very long time. Leonardo da Vinci: simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Einstein: any intelligent fool can make things bigger and more complex. It takes genius and courage to move in the opposite direction. Even Larry Page, the founder of Google, noted that the human genome somehow manages to boot up the brain, run the body, and handle intelligent thought, all in a package smaller than any modern operating system. And yet the software industry has been racing in the opposite direction, piling complexity upon complexity. And yet, today's computers do less than 1% of what a person can do, while being simultaneously beyond the reach of the majority of the people on Earth. It's gone so far that it is almost impossible for any one person to understand what software code is doing, or, in the case of AI, even how it is doing it. Think about what that actually means. More than a quarter of the world cannot use the internet. 60% do not use a computer, which means the promise of the digital age, access to information, to opportunity, to connection, has simply never arrived for billions of people. Not because they are incapable, because the tools built to serve them were built using the wrong methods. Built using 1950 hardware-demanded methods, not human methods. And for those who can use computers today, consider how much of your time is spent fighting the machine rather than working with it. Finding files you cannot locate, navigating menus that make no intuitive sense, managing security that breaks as often as it protects, dealing with formats that cannot talk to one another, opening the wrong program, navigating to the right folder, saving in the right place, backing up before you forget. None of that is what you wanted to do. All of it is what the computer forces you to do. That is the problem. It is 80 years old, and it has never been solved. Until now. And what that means for you, personally, is bigger than you might think. In 1996, Peter Warren did something almost no one in the technology world had done before. He went back to first principles. He stopped asking, how do we improve what already exists, and started asking, what should computing actually be? And the first place he looked was the time before computers, when all computing was done by people. What he found stopped him cold. People do not use programs. People do not use mental files and folders. People do not navigate to save something. And people certainly do not need a security industry to protect them from being hacked. When you ask a person something, they find it. When you tell a person something, they remember it. When you ask a person to do something, they do it, without asking you to start the right application first. The classic computer makes you do things backwards. You cannot ask it anything at all until you have told it which program to use. Imagine asking your assistant what Bill's phone number is, and they reply, "Please tell me which program you want me to use before I can help you." You would think that person was completely insane. The fact that a computer does it does not make it any less insane. Elon Musk calls this approach first principles. Go back to what is fundamentally, indisputably true, and reason upward from there. That is exactly what Peter Warren did, and the conclusion he reached was very much at odds with everything the software industry believed. The question became, what if we built a computer that works the way people work? What if we made a computer as easy to use as using another person? What if we removed everything you have to do with a computer that you never have to do with a person? What if we added in everything which people do with one another which computers do not do? The answer to those questions is ExoBrain. ExoBrain is not a better computer. It is the first computer that was built for people rather than for engineers. The first thing ExoBrain eliminates is the nightmare of computer security. Today's computing is, at its foundation, an open system. Anyone sufficiently motivated can find a way in. Entire industries exist just to stop them, and they fail, routinely and spectacularly. 50 million credit card numbers lost at a single retailer. Ransomware locking hospitals out of patient records. Security patches that break the systems they were meant to protect. This means that for hundreds of millions of people, the computer they rely on is a source of constant anxiety. They do not know if their data is safe. They do not know if that email is real. They have learned to live with the worry because they had no other choice. ExoBrain goes in the opposite direction. It starts closed. It can't even read, let alone execute, any code which does not arrive from its mother ExoBrain. Apart from emails, whose code it cannot execute if they contain any, there are only two ways in: a known user logging on, or a communication arriving correctly encrypted from its mother ExoBrain. Everything inside is encrypted at military grade, even while running. A hacker who spent 2 weeks cracking one ExoBrain would find it gave them no access whatsoever to any other. The security problem is not patched. It is solved at the foundations, which means people who use ExoBrain can stop worrying and start working. The second thing ExoBrain eliminates is programs. Programs are a solution invented in the 1950s, when computers could barely add numbers together. Nobody, in the decades that followed, stopped to ask, what does the human user actually want? The answer, it turns out, is that people do not want programs at all. They want to get things done. A program forces you to work backwards. Before you can do anything, you must choose a program. Before you can tell a computer what you want, you must tell it what tool to use. This is the opposite of how every human interaction works, and it is one of the reasons half the world has never really managed to use a computer successfully. ExoBrain replaces programs with exo apps, assembled from completely independent building blocks, the way Lego bricks are assembled. Any look, any function, any data, any number of views of the same information, no programming required to build or change them. Which means the barrier between a person and what they need to do simply disappears. The third thing ExoBrain eliminates is forced misclassification of data. Today, programs force you to classify your information by what the program can do with it. Word documents, spreadsheets, presentations. But that is not how people think. People think in terms of what the information is: a letter, a note, a project, a person, a conversation. ExoBrain lets you work with data the way you naturally think about it, and then do whatever you need to do with it, unconstrained by what a programmer decided was possible. Which means your computer finally works with the way your mind works, not against it. The fourth thing ExoBrain eliminates is multiple data formats. Today, there are thousands of incompatible formats, and one program's data is invisible to every other program. If the fact that Joe owes you $10 lives in 10 different programs, no computer on Earth can tell you how much Joe owes you in total. This single flaw spawned two entire industries: database connectivity and data mining, both of which exist solely to work around a problem that should never have existed. ExoBrain has one format: any data type, any source, all correctly related automatically. So the question gets answered, which means for the first time, a computer can actually think across all its own information the way a person can. ExoBrain also eliminates files and folders, the need to navigate to save something, the need to navigate to find something, the requirement to visit different parts of the computer to do different things, and, might I add, the ordeal of backups. You do not tell ExoBrain where to save something, you just save it. You do not navigate to find something. You tell ExoBrain what you remember about it, and it finds it, the way a good secretary would, by asking a clarifying question if needed, never by dumping a haystack in your lap and leaving you to find the needle yourself. And backups happen with one button, or automatically, invisibly, without interruption. Which means that for the first time, the experience of using a computer feels the way it always should have felt: natural, immediate, and human. When ExoBrain was demonstrated to members of the general public, people who had never used it before, nobody needed help. Nobody. Over 70% wanted to buy it immediately. That is what removing 80 years of friction feels like. Removing what should never have been there was step one. Step two is giving computers the ability to do the 99% of things people can do that no computer has ever been able to do. And this is where ExoBrain becomes genuinely extraordinary. People adapt how they communicate depending on who they are talking to. You do not speak to a 5-year-old the way you speak to a surgeon. You do not use the same words with a first-time user as you do with someone who has spent decades in front of a screen. Until now, every computer in the world has spoken to everyone identically. Whatever some programmer in a software factory decided years ago is what everyone gets. In ExoBrain, every word on every screen can be changed. Many different interfaces can be built in the same ExoBrain that are perfectly suited to a child, to an expert, to a non-English speaker, to a person encountering a computer for the very first time. The interface can evolve as the person becomes more confident, automatically shifting to show more or less detail as needed, which means a computer that genuinely meets people where they are, rather than demanding they meet it where it is. ExoBrain also adds help the way a person adds help, not a static manual buried in a folder no one can find. It can walk you through each step, one at a time, in plain language. It shows help precisely where you are looking. It gives a newcomer everything they need and an expert nothing they don't. And then there is the part that nobody sees coming: exo-personalities. An exo-personality is a complete transformation of the ExoBrain interface. Every screen, every word, every color, every prompt built around a consistent character. A celebrity, a cartoon, a school theme, an environment. When ExoBrain was placed in a school in Florida, the pupils created their own personalities without being asked. They built their school's identity directly into the computer, spontaneously, because they could. Which means a computer that people are not afraid of. One that feels familiar, even warm. One that invites engagement rather than demanding tolerance. ExoBrain lets you use images anywhere. People put photographs on their walls, in letters, in their wallets. They use images constantly and instinctively. Today's computers can place images in almost no places without special effort. ExoBrain lets you put any image on any button, any screen, any application, any desktop, in any shape, anywhere. Just a couple of clicks. which means the computer becomes a mirror of real life. And when the computer mirrors real life, anyone can use it because everyone already knows what real life is. ExoBrain adds desktops in an entirely new sense. People live in houses. Houses have rooms. The kitchen has what you need to cook. The office has what you need to work. The games room has what you need to play. Everything for each activity is assembled in the right place, ready when you arrive. Today's computer crushes everything into one screen. The kitchen, the office, the games room, the garden shed, all compressed into a space a couple of feet square. Finding what you need requires knowing the system. Knowing the system takes years. ExoBrain gives you exo rooms, each one set up for a purpose, each one with the tools assembled for what happens there. You can name different areas of an exo room the way you would name corners of a room. You can have as many exo rooms as you like. You can move between them the way you move between rooms in a building, knowing exactly where you are and exactly what is available to you. Which means the computer becomes a place you can live and work in, rather than a system you have to fight your way through. Imagine a world where the entire population could only communicate by sending physical letters. No conversation, no telephone, no calling across the room. People in that world would move at a crawl, and their ability to help one another would be almost nothing. That is the world computers live in today. They send files. That is essentially it. They cannot talk, they cannot ask, they cannot fetch, they cannot collaborate. They are, in effect, mute. ExoBrain changes that. Two ExoBrains can chat in real time, securely, encrypted, instantly. One ExoBrain can send anything it contains to another, a letter, a menu, an application, an entire desktop, and it appears on arrival. Multiple ExoBrains can work on the same document simultaneously, each person's changes appearing on everyone else's screens moments later. One ExoBrain can reach across the world to another ExoBrain, find what it needs, and bring it back, without any human on either end having to do anything. Think about what that makes possible. A manager needs the total sales figure from 10,000 stores across 12 countries. In today's world, that is a project. In ExoBrain, it is a single instruction. A teacher in Paris works through a problem on screen, and every student in every city watching sees the changes in real time. A new employee arrives on their first day and receives every tool, every application, every permission they need, sent directly to their ExoBrain in minutes. One IBM executive who previously managed global e-business implementation for IBM Corporate spent 8 hours with ExoBrain and said, "I have never seen anything like ExoBrain. Within 8 hours of installing it for the first time, I had built an application, sent it to 2 other systems, searched those systems remotely, and moved data back and forth between all of them." The ExoBrain Any Data Anywhere capability is, in one word, unreal. This is not a person who is easily impressed. This is someone who has built and deployed enterprise systems at the highest level in the world. And this is what ExoBrain did in 8 hours. ExoBrain also introduces the ExoWeb, a web composed entirely of ExoBrains, where data stays where it was created, and where browsing retrieves not just information, but the full functionality to work with it. When you find something on the ExoWeb, what arrives is not just data. It is an Exo app, ready to use, ready to customize, ready to do something. The web as it exists today is a library with no librarian and no way to act on what you find. The ExoWeb is something fundamentally different. Anyone with no programming knowledge whatsoever can build an Exo app in ExoBrain, point and click. And the moment a new Exo app is born, it has the full communications ability of the entire ExoBrain system available to it instantly. In testing, 14 ordinary, non-programming people were given a working ExoBrain for 1 week with almost nothing on it. By the end of that week, they had created tens of Exo apps. Address books, recipe collections, purchase orders, HR evaluation tools, games, health trackers, school timetables. Some of them were quite sophisticated, and not a single line of code was written, not by any of them. Let that sink in for a moment. We live in a world where code runs everything, where entire industries exist just to write it, teach it, and manage it. And these 14 ordinary people, people just like you, built tens of them without a single line of it. Stunning. And they did not stop there. They started sending their Exo apps to each other. The apps spread from person to person, each one customizing and passing them on. That is how ExoBrain grows, not from a factory, but from the people using it and changing it to suit their needs. A notice board became something resembling Twitter in 15 minutes. An inventory application became a wine auction in 45. The auction became a car parts exchange. The car parts exchange became a different car parts exchange. Something resembling Facebook, with chat, posts, a marketplace, and games, took 4 hours. 6 hours of work, 1 mouse, 1 keyboard, 5 distinct applications of varying sophistication. Which means that when ExoBrain is in the world, the question is not, what can it do? The question is, what the billions of people using it will choose to build. Now, the answer to that question has never been answered before, because this has never existed before. Everything described here, the security, the Exo apps, the single data format, the communications, the personalities, the desktops, the creation tools, all of it flows from one discovery. People and every genuinely powerful system in nature, genetics, Lego, music notation, binary code, operate on a single underlying principle. A principle so simple and so elegant that once you understand it, you cannot unsee it. It appears to be the basic method nature itself uses to build things. Everything in ExoBrain is built on that same principle. That is why anything in ExoBrain can connect to anything else. That is why a new Exo app has the full power of the system the moment it is created. That is why, just like a human working on the same principle, the ExoBrain has no limits that have so far been found. And that is why the launch version of ExoBrain will include comprehensive, everyday English language control. Sometime after that, anyone, anywhere, in any language will be able to simply tell ExoBrain what they want done, and ExoBrain will ask what it needs to know and then do it. And by the way, not a voice assistant that recognizes commands from a fixed list. A system that understands the way a person understands, because it is built on the same principle people use. A 5-year-old demonstrated this with Jill, ExoBrain's proof of concept prototype. That child sent their first email, in French, unassisted, using conversational mode. The computer asking what it needed to know, the child answering, the computer acting. No menu, no program, no navigation, just a conversation. And that is what the future of computing looks like. Bill Gates said, "If you're going to break through on artificial intelligence so machines can learn, that's worth 10 Microsofts." Stephen Hawking said, "Success in artificial intelligence would be the biggest event ever in human history." ExoBrain is not artificial intelligence in the popular sense. It is something more fundamental. It is the infrastructure on which real artificial intelligence becomes possible, because ExoBrain works the way people work. Not the way engineers in the 1950s worked with what they had. We are not building another app. We are not building another operating system. We are beginning a new family of computing, the first genuinely new family since the 1940s. Windows, Android, iOS, they all belong to one family. Under the hood, they share the same foundations, the same limitations, the same 80-year-old design decisions that have kept the majority of humanity locked out. ExoBrain shares none of those foundations. ExoBrain comes from a completely different place and goes somewhere the soon-to-be obsolete world of computing cannot follow. ExoBrain is a newborn today. It crawls, it dribbles a little, it does not always stand up perfectly, yet. But it has a brain, which is more than you can say for anything else claiming to solve these problems. Now you have a choice. You can watch from the outside as this unfolds. That is a perfectly valid thing to do. The world is full of moments that turn out to matter, and it is not always easy to know which ones they are until they have already happened. But the people who were in the room when it happened, who chose to be there rather than wait and see, they are the ones who never had to wonder what might have been. Or you can be part of building it. If you are a builder, someone who wants to contribute to something that has never existed before, ExoTech is looking for people who see what this is and want to help shape it. Those who prove their value now will have a place on the team as this moves forward. And if you are an investor, someone who understands what it means to be present at the beginning of a new computing era, this is that moment. The people who recognize it early are the people who will look back on this as the most important decision they made. The people who helped build the internet did not know exactly what it would become. Neither did the people who backed it early. What they knew was that something fundamental had changed, and they wanted to be on the right side of that change. This is ExoBrain 2, and the Exo era is coming. The question is whether you will be part of it or not.